Hello, everyone, and welcome to NetApp On Air. As always, I am your host, Nick Howell. Thank you so much for joining us today for another awesome episode diving into the technologies here at NetApp. Got a great guest for you today, but first, if you're not already, join us in our Discord community. That is the place to be. We've got over 5,000 active members that are in there, practitioners across our partner ecosystem, as well as all of you, our end user customers that are hanging out, solving each other's problems, helping each other along the way. Some of our execs and our product leaders also hang out in there and take your feedback directly. So it is the place to be. Come join us, discord.gg/NetApp, or head over to netappdiscord.com and click the join button there. Lots of stuff to go over. We're still early in the year. Things are going great. We had the launch a couple of weeks ago of the new updated ASA systems. You guys are very excited about that. We've gotten lots of feedback on that. The price point's amazing. The entry and mid-level systems complement the systems we launched last year at Insight. So if you haven't seen all of that, you can find that right here on the YouTube channel in the playlist right here for NetApp On Air. You can go back and check that out. There's also a really cool launch video going over a lot of that stuff. But today we're going to talk about some really cool, geeky, gooey stuff called data classification. Yeah, data center dog making an appearance there. Data classification to me is one of those things that I've been kind of pontificating about endlessly. People have to be good custodians and good librarians of their data, and they have to constantly curate metadata that's going to associate with all of this. And we dealt with this in the big data movement about 10 years ago, where people weren't indexing things properly and things like that, so they were getting garbage in, garbage out, that old good phrase. Well, with AI, it's going to be even more imperative that you're doing that, especially when you're looking into things like retrieval augmented generated solutions, or RAG, other solutions that are coming from some of our partners out there. What we offer and what we bring to the table is the ability to solve some of those problems before it ever turns into garbage going into those systems. So today I wanted to bring in someone to talk about data classification and how we do that and how we help you get all of that together. So I'm happy to bring to the show Miss Darnell Fatigati. She is our Senior Product Marketing Manager for Hybrid Cloud Solutions, and she's going to talk to us today about data classification. Darnell, thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be here and talk about this topic. But yeah, we say that all the time. That is a phrase that we love in the world of classification: garbage in, garbage out. And I think for our customers, I mean, we see that it's getting so much harder for them to weed through this garbage and, you know, find the jewels, find the value that they could use and turn into something, you know, even better. And AI is definitely an area, and Gen AI and RAG, it's definitely an area where you've got to make sure that what you're putting in is good.
Yeah.
You need to be efficient. You need to be effective. So this is where classification comes in.
So help me understand the evolution of this. This all started back with an acquisition that we made about 5 years ago now. A little company basically brought them in. We played with it with Cloud Data Sense, I think was the name of it, for a period of time. And then we realized it was such a powerful tool that we really just wanted all of our customers to have it anyway. So how has that evolved today? This is advertised as a free tool for all NetApp customers. Help us understand some of the dynamics of that.
Yeah. Well, actually, when we purchased the company, our product name was called Cloud Compliance. Right. So we were focusing on cloud, and we were focusing specifically on one use case, and that was around compliance. But then what we saw is that there are other use cases, and customers were getting so much value out of this tool in terms of being able to optimize their storage, understand what data they should be migrating to the cloud so that that migration was much more efficient, effective, faster. So we then changed the name to Cloud Data Sense. And, you know, the whole idea there being, we help you make sense of your data. And then we recently changed the name, I'd say, like, you know, within the past year and a half, to BlueXP Classification, because we wanted to focus on, you know, the actual capability of the tool, and that's helping you classify your data. And it used to be a chargeable service. However, you know, we are the intelligent data infrastructure company, And this is a tool that really helps you get insight so that you can make intelligent decisions about your data. So we made a really bold strategic move, and we said, hey, you know what? We're not going to charge for this anymore. We're going to let all of our customers take advantage of this so that they can better get insight into that data. They can better manage it. And for us, it's about providing more intelligence for them.
Yeah.
So that's
a great breakdown. And I look at this as an unsung hero of sorts, because as I was saying in the beginning and my posts leading up to today's episode, it's something that I've been sort of browbeating the industry about, is like, people have not been good stewards of their data.
Yeah.
And it's not an indictment of any kind. It's just, it's not something a lot of departments of IT have had to care about in the, of any kind of priority in the past. It's like, okay, so-and-so's home drives, and you've got your departmental network shares, and yeah, accounting has all their tax history and all that stuff, and they're in Excel spreadsheets, and it's over there, and they know where it is. But if you want to make use of that, if you want to do some analytics against it, you've got to make sure that the file names, the tags, the metadata associated with it, all of that has to come into play, because otherwise it's just going to be, John Doe's tax year 25 spreadsheet. Like, that's not really going to tell you anything at the end of the day. So I think that's one of the big problems that this solves. Anything else you would want to add to that?
Yeah, you can't do this manually. I mean, the sheer volume of data, managing the volumes that we see is hugely complex. And yeah, I mean, and not only that, but data is now in silos everywhere, right? You've got on-prem, you've got in the cloud, you've got, SaaS solutions. So it's really hard to do that manually. You need a tool that's going to automate that for you, that's going to use AI to make that so much easier. IDC is saying that the global data sphere is going to grow to 170 zettabytes this year. 175 zettabytes by 2025. So, I mean, this is crazy. So how do you manage this?
Yeah.
You can't do it, manually anymore. So that's where tools like this come in, and they're becoming much, much more essential. And, as the sheer volume of data grows, it becomes even more imperative for you to be efficient and effective in managing that, because this is data now that you have to store and that you have to pay for storing. And also, by the way, from a compliance perspective, there are a lot of, regulations around that. And often, our storage admins, they didn't really deal with this until a compliance officer came to them and said, hey, we need help, or we need help.
And even then, we would usually point at the Oracle DB and go, that's their job.
Yeah.
Speaking from firsthand experience here, like that's, I do email, like, but that's, social security number masking in the database, go talk to the DBAs. Yeah. I just store the ones that they use to use Oracle. Yeah. Anyway.
The DBAs say, I don't know.
Oracle defaults, I guess. I don't know. Right, exactly. Yeah. Compliance. Anyway. Yeah. I want to pull your slides up here because you got a really good story to tell us, and I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for us to have a big conversation about this. And guys, make sure you throw in your questions in the chat along the way if you have them as well. We're going to be talking about a lot of aspects of this today. If you are a customer and you have BlueXP, pull up your browser, open up BlueXP, and follow along with us. There's going to be some stuff towards the latter half of this where you're going to be able to see some of the screens that this stuff executes in. So if you have any questions about it as you go along, as you demo it, Darnell, do you know if there's is there a lab on demand that walks people through doing this? There is. Okay. I thought there was. I just wanted to make sure. So yeah, you guys have access to a lab as well. So if you don't have this or you don't want to do this on your production BlueXP instance, you can go to labondemand.netapp.com, log in with your now account. How old am I? Your NetApp support account, and get into the lab on demand to be able to walk through it as well. So let's get started, Darnell. How do you kick this off usually when it comes to data classification?
Yeah, well, we talked about this. I think the challenge that we're all facing is the explosive data growth. And the interesting stat here is that 96% of enterprises that have siloed data, I think most of them acknowledge the fact that data is siloed, it's everywhere. They don't know what information lies in their data. And that's a problem. How could you manage that appropriately? How can you secure it? How can you be compliant? How could you figure out, from an AI perspective and a Gen AI perspective, what data you should be inputting to get, to not deliver garbage, right?
Yeah.
So this is the biggest challenge, is just, I don't know. I just don't know what's in my data. And when we look at this from, an AI perspective, we've got a couple of different people that care about this and that are struggling. First, we have the data scientists. And what they want to know is that I'm going to be able to get to the right data that will help answer the questions that I'm trying to address. And number one, it has to be easy for me to use, and it has to be a repeatable process. But the other thing that is now coming into play with Gen AI is compliance and new regulations. So the European AI Act is the only one that's in play right now. It's the first comprehensive regulation on AI from a major regulator. In the US, we've got an executive order, but there's a lot of talk around new federal regulations, a lot of state regulations that are being proposed to address AI. And that's just making sure that private information, personal and sensitive data doesn't inadvertently get exposed. So today, the data scientists, that's a bit of a hurdle, but what I've been hearing is it's something that they're not really paying attention to. And they're just, using the data that they have that they think that they can use, but eventually this could catch up to them. So we've got to make sure that they've got tools in place that they can handle that data, according to compliance regulations and according to their company policies. So,
I'll throw in that I don't fault them specifically for knowing whether or not the data is curated and meticulously taken care of. I'm more looking at the person over on the right and going, that's the person that needs to make sure that the data scientist is doing their processes with the right information.
Exactly. And that's the first bullet under there.
Oh, their job, you do have that on there.
Is getting the data scientists the data that they need. But at the end of the day, if the data scientists, if the data engineers, if they're not looking after this, the company is liable. So I think, sort of data privacy and even security becomes everybody's problem. But the data engineer, they're the ones that are developing the architecture, the workflows, the processes to make sure that the data scientists are doing what they need to do and that they're efficient and effective in doing that. So the data engineer has to enforce the data access policies that are coming down from above, right, from their C levels. And they're also responsible for helping them comply with the new AI regulations. So this is a big job. For both of them, this is a big job. So they need
and unfortunately, I see a lot of crossover here. A lot of times, a lot of these two roles being done by the same person, especially in sort of, because these are fairly new. I mean, within the last 5 to 10 years, we're really starting to see the data scientists sort of become a real thing. I think this is going to fracture even more into more junior roles like prompt engineers, or what I've loosely dubbed info engineers, information engineers, where they're taking the work that the data scientist is doing in building and training LLMs, and then using that to do what would formerly be known as like business intelligence and things like that by just prompting the models that the data scientist has put together. I think we're going to see over the next 10 years the data scientist ecosystem sort of fracture out into even more scaled out kind of role sets, especially in larger enterprises where you've got a lot of people doing this. But right now I see a lot of crossover here. The same people doing both of these. They're trying to build their own frameworks. They're doing all their own RAG ingest. But they're also building their own models and everything, and doing all of the probing and all of the BI that comes along with it. So I feel for you, all of you out there doing that, but I hang tight, because I think over the next few years, this is really going to start taking hold as some of the top roles to have in senior IT departments.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and as that starts breaking down too, then we get to see what are maybe some additional specific challenges within the process. And you'll
Yep.
start to see new technologies that address those as well. I mean, us included. I mean, we're already down the path thinking about the next step and the next phase of our evolution of classification and how we're going to help, specifically for AI use cases.
Yeah, in 2 years, we've already moved on from Gen AI into agentic AI. So we're already talking about individual agents that can do some of the stuff that I was just rattling off in an automated AI-driven kind of way, as opposed to having individuals doing that kind of stuff. And I think we're going to see retail and consumer-driven services really drive this home in order to drive it back into the enterprise. That was some of my big predictions for this year. I was saying, like, yeah, we're really going to see consumer uptake in AI uses being driven, much like we saw with the BYOD movement back into enterprise IT with iPhones and Blackberries and iPads and laptops and things like that. I think the same thing's going to happen with some consumer. Copilot is probably one of the best examples of that. Everybody with a Windows PC has Copilot now. You don't think that's going to make it into the enterprise in the near term? It's kind of already is.
Yeah.
So things like that, I think, are going to drive end users to almost become junior data scientists in a way, because they're going to be doing a lot of the stuff that you would see these guys typically be specialized in.
Yeah. I mean, and I look at it, my own personal life, I was using Chat GPT well before we had our own RAG at NetApp, that now we're all able to use. But yeah, I agree that I think it's probably going to start on the consumer side and drive it into the enterprise. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, when it comes to ingesting data sets, there are a number of steps and a number of challenges, associated with that in and of itself. So it's about, first of all, finding the data sources and how to access them, right? Again, data silos, huge volume of data. You don't even know what you have. Forget about what's in it, but like how much data resides where. So it's being able to first get that mapped view of your entire landscape to see, what do I even have? Like, how much data do we even have? And then going through and making sure that you're checking the quality and the relevance of that data. So, garbage in, garbage out, make sure that it's not garbage. Evaluating the format and the steps to extract the information.
What does that mean when you evaluate the data format and the steps to extract? Like, give me an example of like that would be.
So making sure, understanding what file types do you have, right? How, of all of the data that you have, what do you have? Docs, PDF, text, what is it? So
large images, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, size could be another way, but even just like looking at like the format of your data. So understanding it, how would you know, how do you know that unless, you were doing that manually? And then analyzing the sensitivity of the information, right? So coming back again to that other step that data scientists just, want to get the data in. They're not really understanding, is there PII in there that I should be protecting? So it's making sure that you could identify, do you have that sensitive information? Exclude, and then being able to exclude any kind of explicit or informal data or, PII sensitive data too, that you don't want. Yeah. Cleaning it. So then getting that data set, figuring out, all right, what do I want to include? What do I want to exclude? Maybe it's, understanding what you want to exclude and either deleting, creating a clone of that and then deleting the data out of that clone so that you have a clean data set. Also, deduplicating that information, right? So if you've got, that could skew results of a model. If it may assign undue importance to one particular file if there are multiple files that are just duplicates. And then chunking up the data, right? So finding the correct chunk sizes, which isn't necessarily classification. I'll show you in the next slide, like where classification can help. But having automated and repeatable processes. And then the last part, tracking and storing the data sources follow your laws and your policies.
So is this workflow here? Is this something when it says data ingest? Is this when new files are being written to a share? This process happens automatically if classification is enabled?
Well, yes, that will be if classification is the parts that classification is doing. It is a constant scan.
Gotcha.
So if you have policies set up, it constantly scans that data and then updates the results that you get within your dashboard.
Okay.
But yeah, it needs to be automated. So these processes of being able to find this, you could either run it on ad hoc, right? So say you just have a project and then you want to go filter your data for a specific data set that you're looking for, you could do that ad hoc. Or if there's, a policy and you want to constantly update that policy, then, you can set that up to run automatically too.
What, if anything, since this is done in the cloud and this is done in a hosted managed service by NetApp, am I exposing any of my data to NetApp or any of the service providers during this scan? Because it is doing deep scans, right?
Yeah. So actually, a lot of people do think that portion of it, that the scanning and the classifying and the indexing and that's all SaaS. It's actually not. So BlueXP, the control plane is SaaS based, but the customer actually deploys the scanner in their VPC, either in the cloud or on-prem. And what we actually see is that a lot of customers, I would say the majority of customers deploy the classification scanner on-prem. Some of them even do it in a dark site. So NetApp does not have any access to that data.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. Basically what we do when we index it, there's an Elasticsearch database. So it will require a VM, on your prem or, in the cloud. And that's where the scanner resides. There's an Elasticsearch database that indexes all of the artifacts of the scan. And that's completely in the customer control in their environment. Yep. But we do get that question a lot because obviously people are very concerned about security.
Yeah.
So these are all the areas here. There's a lot, as you can see during this data ingest process, there's a lot that classification can do to help. And, breaking this out more specifically, when we talk about, okay, what does that mean? Checking data quality and relevance. Well, classification can automatically identify the data category. So it can say, is this a legal file? Is it an HR file? Is it finance file? Is it, maybe a marketing file? What's the file type? When it comes to evaluating the format and the steps, so it automatically identifies the format, which we talked about. Analyzing the included features and the sensitivity. So it'll determine the sensitivity. So it'll find PII and sensitive PII across, a number of different categories and PII types that we can identify. You could exclude explicit or informal data. So this automatically identifies things like non-business data that's based on a category or based on a format. And these are things that are preset. The categories, we automatically identify the category, and we automatically identify what we call non-business data. Now, if you don't agree with the way we're classifying non-business data, that's fine. That's why we have that investigation tab. You can go in and specifically choose what you're looking for. So if we say, hey, we're going to identify all MP4s as non-business, or cat photos and your holiday party photos, those are all.
What do you mean you're not indexing all of my memes? Exactly. How dare you, right? In my home drive.
Right. You can change that. If our folks that are setting the policies around this at NetApp say, no, it's okay, Nick, those are all related to business, they can change that. And then cleaning the data set. So then, you set your filters. There is some manual. So if you find files that you just want to delete, you just will manually delete those. We actually did allow customers to delete from directly within our tool. But then we found that it was becoming a bit of a management nightmare. Customers were having a hard time with it because people were just randomly deleting files that they shouldn't be deleting. So we've eliminated the delete function and said, hey, look, we're going to develop the best classification tool to find the data that you're looking for. The actions that you take after that, that's on you. And we have other tools that, you know, like copy and sync, and that you can either move data, delete data. And then the last part here, you know, deduplicating the information. So, you know, we're talking about files that are duplicates that we could identify duplicates based on a file hash, duplicate files. We'll identify those for you, and then you can, you know, delete those as well.
Yeah, I had a question come in real quick. Is there text recognition for images? Like OCR scanning and things like that?
Yeah, no. Okay. For like OCI, we are working on that. That is something that you know, we had on the roadmap, but requires a bit more development work than what we can do today. Today, it's all based on NLP, so natural language processing.
Right.
Yeah, but that's a good question, and we get that a lot. So yeah, this is what it looks like. I mean, you know, and I've got a couple of screens too. We could dive a little bit deeper, but basically, like, what we really like about this tool and what our customers really like about this tool is the fact that once you configure the data sources that you want to scan, it starts scanning immediately and then populates these very nice graphical widgets. And when you log in, you know, it's all very visual, like, you know, it's colorful. You can see here, red, yellow, green. So, you know, one is, hey, look, this is sensitive personal data. The yellow is, okay, this is personal data. And then the green is, okay, it's not personal data. So you get like really nice visuals. As soon as you log in, like, it'll give you your savings opportunity. So it immediately shows you how much is stale data, how much is non-business data, how much is duplicate. So if storage optimization is your main goal, you can take action right there and like click on the widget, and then it brings you into that investigation tab, and you get a full, you know, detailed view of what it found. And again, you know, we set our parameters around what we consider stale data, that it hasn't been modified in the past 3 years, but you could go and change that yourself. You can say, hey, no, I want everything over 7 years, or maybe over 2 years, and you could do that as well. So it maps all of your data, categorizes all of your data. There's a couple of things. If you don't care about, say, categories or PII, and you just want to know, all right, I don't want to feed anything into my models that are, you know, over whatever, 3 years old, you can do what we call a mapping scan. So there's two different kinds of scans that you can do. You can either map, or you can map and classify. And the mapping really just looks at the metadata and gives you an overview, analyzes all of your files just based on the metadata. And that scan is a quicker scan because it doesn't have to actually look into the file and read it and extract the PII. So if you want to do that, we call that a classification scan. And it takes, you know, a little bit longer, but it then gives you that full view of, okay, what are the categories that I have and what kind of PII do I have in here?
Nice. That's awesome. And you mentioned something yesterday when we were talking about it actually does crack open the files and it looks for any kind of PII. Am I jumping ahead, or is that something we could talk about?
Yeah, let's talk about that. Okay. Well, actually, before we get off this slide, so a couple of other things. So the other thing is, you know, we talked a lot about data silos, right? And how difficult that is. What you can do here is set up all of your data silos. Well, your NetApp. So this scans data within your NetApp estate, right? So you've got some on-prem, you've got some in the cloud. You can configure all of those, and you'll get it pulled together into this dashboard and see it all together. And then it will even tell you, hey, you know, Nick, I see that you've got 75%, you know, of your data is in, I don't know, your in FSXN, and maybe a third of that is sensitive personal information, and you've got open permissions associated with that. So you can say, oh, let me focus on this very specific working environment and address that first, because I shouldn't have, in my cloud environments, I may not want to have sensitive data, number one. Or if I do have sensitive data, I'm going to want to make sure that the permissions are where they should be and that they're not exposed.
And I can also set compliance policies around, like you mentioned FSXN. That's a great example because I believe you can set policies around life cycle so that you don't really keep anything up there that's more than a year old. You can it'll at least tell you that you're out of compliance, where you can move that back to maybe an on-prem archive or a smaller S3 bucket or something like that, so that it's not sitting there consuming expensive AWS storage.
Yeah.
I think there's this isn't just about AI, classification. Like there's ways that it can help you manage your infrastructure easier, by building some of these policies around it, just using some simple things like that. So I just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, exactly. And if compliance is one of the use cases that you're worried about, I mean, we have standardized reports in there too, that you just click the button, run a HIPAA compliance report or run a PCI report, or one that's also really popular is the DSAR, the data subject access request. So say you as a consumer go to a company and say, hey, tell me all of the data that you're storing that is about me. They could just type in Nick Howell and it'll scan, the configured data sources, and it'll tell me exactly, how many references to you. And then I can click, all right, show me those files. And then in that investigation tab, it'll give me a list of all of the files. So I can then choose to provide that. You as a consumer would have a right then to say, you give me a list of those files. And we could, then you download that, you give that to you.
And hand that off to the storage engineer and say, go fix it.
Yeah, exactly. Nick wants all of his information deleted. He has the right to do that. Go delete it.
Yep.
Yeah. So for compliance too, that's why we say, automates the routine compliance tasks and reporting around compliance. So
this seems incredibly powerful. Just in general, what's the uptake that we're seeing on this? Like, is this popular amongst our customers?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will say, since it became a core capability within BlueXP, that barrier to the financial barrier to adoption was completely, blown away. And we've seen such huge uptick since that happened. And that happened May last year.
Yeah, last summer.
Yeah. And I think, for our customers, because it's just so easy to just go try it. And I think, a lot of the feedback that I get is once they start to try it, they're like, wow, oh my gosh, like I had no idea that I had this in my data. We had a customer last year who they just wanted to understand how much stale data they had. It was a storage optimization use case. And I think, for a lot of our customers, that's the easiest one to understand, right?
Like everybody should do that. There's like everybody should take a look at that, especially those of you that aren't already taking advantage of some of those technologies like a Fabric Pools or something like that in your on-prem systems. Everybody should be running that stale data report because it's going to give you an idea of like how much cold data are you sitting on that's maybe sitting on that very expensive AFF that you paid gave a small limb for. Yeah. And, how could you offload that and extend the life of that? So, and it's free, guys. I think it's amazing that we've got this out there right now.
It really is. And so with that one customer, this was actually healthcare. They just set out to understand the stale data. But what they found was they had actually 2%, but millions of files, 2% overall of all the data they were storing, had sensitive information in it and open permissions, which in this day and age of ransomware attacks, what you have to clean that up. That's exactly what they're after. So they put the storage optimization use case on hold and said, this is a bleeding from the neck issue. We need to address this. We weren't even looking for this, but BlueXP Classification told us that this is what we have. So we got to address this. And so they sort of shifted gears and did that first. But but yeah, there are definitely, the AI use case is a newer one, but this is basic data hygiene that, people just don't do, and I think, again, having to do with volume of data, having to do with the complexity of doing that manually. But when you have an AI tool that's helping you do that, there's no reason not to.
Well, I'll speak for the infrastructure engineers of the world for a second. There really was no benefit to it for a long time until developers started coming to us and needing that data. Normally, they would just build and use their own databases, that however they would do that. And they didn't never really need it. The only time you'd get someone from the finance department every now and then wanting to do some kind of audit or some kind of business intelligence things, but most of that stuff lived in things like Microsoft Dynamics or JD Edwards or whatever system you might be using. So the IT team, we just made sure the power stayed on and it was connected. So I think for the first time, maybe the only other exception will be like the Hadoop big data stuff 10 years ago. For the first real time, we're seeing it fall on the shoulders of technical systems admins, storage engineers, server admins, and things like that to make sure that all of this data, this raw data, is categorized properly, is labeled properly, is named properly, has the right file extensions, it's in the right folder structure, like all of that. This might be one of the first times where that's really mattered, because it hasn't in the past. Not this much.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And I think companies, we always say, we at NetApp always talk about the fact that we're in the age of data, right? I mean, everybody is digital. Your business is digital. Digital relies on data, but you've got to make sure that those data assets are going to be, efficient and give you what you need to get out of them so that you can innovate. So I think the people that own the data, the people that are responsible for storing the data, this is an all hands on deck kind of activity.
You would not take crude oil out of the ground and put it straight into the gas tank of your car.
Right.
It won't run. Mm-hmm. It needs refinement. Mm-hmm. It needs curation. It needs a lot of care and feeding before it'll start an engine. And that's kind of the analogy that I like to use when I think about this, is like there is a required, set of things that you have to do minimum to kind of get started with this. The beauty of BlueXP data classification is we automate a lot of that stuff for you to get you started. There's still some knobs to turn and some tweaks to make along the way that you'll discover. Like you were talking about earlier, like people stumble into their own mistakes. Think, oh, I didn't even know I had that. Or, why are we indexing Betty Sue's home drive with her cat pictures? And like that kind of stuff you'll find along the way as you're doing this. But just pushing the button that says start in BlueXP data classification and just seeing what it comes up with costs you nothing. There's very little overhead to it, if any, that I can think of. You got to install a container if you're doing an on-prem system.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of overhead.
Yeah, and we will guide you through that in BlueXP.
Yeah. But at the same time, like the value that you're going to get of it, regardless of whether you're looking at doing a RAG AI solution yet, all of you are going to be very soon, I promise. It's going to become table stakes. Just go ask your CFO. But just turn it on. The value you're going to get out of it is going to be monumental if you've never done something like this before. So,
yeah.
Sorry, pontificating a little bit more there. But this is Nick browbeating you to go take care of your data.
Yeah.
Because you're going to need it very, very soon.
Yeah. I mean, and it is easy, right? I mean, but that's again, like what BlueXP is all about. It's meant to just make a lot of operational tasks and data management tasks so much easier for our customers. Yeah. And this is like a great example. Like that's why everybody loves this service, because it's so visual. It's so easy to see. Oh, now I understand how easy, like you took this mess, all the the needles in the haystack and like trying to find exactly what I'm looking for. And you've organized them for me. And now I can see exactly what I have and then look for exactly what I need.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I see governance and compliance up there. What else have we got up there? I know that it does more than that, right?
Yeah, so these are just the tabs. So this is, in lieu of having a live demo, the governance tab, I think I said it gives you that overview. It's just like sort of your snapshot. You can see here there's top data repositories by sensitivity level. So where it's really red, there's like a particular file share that has a lot of sensitive information in it. So the red is your sensitive information. So this just helps you understand, where do I focus? And then the next tab is specifically for compliance, categorizing data into areas of regulatory concern. So if it's red, that's the sensitive personal information. That's the information you're going to want to look at. All right, do I have any open permissions on these? Where is it stored? From a data sovereignty perspective, if my company is located in, the UK, but this data is stored in, Asia or the US, that may be an issue. So compliance, really helps you focus on ensuring that you're meeting regulations. This is also where you will then get those legally compliant reports that we talked about, or that data subject access request. You could go into the investigation tab. And
I had one question real quick. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Go back for me. Under compliance, there's something that happens in regulated industries or companies that fall under not just HIPAA, but things like SOX. So SOX compliance in a nutshell, and I'm grossly oversimplifying this, they come in every 6 months and just make sure that you're following your own policies that you define to them. This is mostly found in like publicly traded companies and things like that. My experience with this comes from working at a public healthcare company. And that was things we had to learn as we went public. So we set the policies, right? But SOX requires they're going to come in and check and make sure. Somebody from Ernst & Young is going to come in once a year and be like, go pull these 6 random date backups, or show me how you're following these policies. Does the reporting in the compliance tab that you were just discussing kind of do some of that for me?
Yes, not for SOX. So we're limited into PCI, DSS, HIPAA, and then the DSARs. But for SOX, if you know what you're looking for, there's no reason why you can't then go into that investigation tab through our 28 filters and say, all right, show me this. Like, I need to show this for SOX. Show me this.
Yeah.
And then you get a report, and then you could download that. You could export that file. It won't be in a nice package.
It kind of gets you there, but it's a nice helper to get you along the way. SOX is hard because it's your policies that you defined to the agency, and it's hard to build it into something like this. But that little step of helping you get there, and just through the reporting, the investigation tab, is a big deal. So for those of you out there at public companies, like, understand that like this can help you get there for a lot of, whether it's PCI or DSAR or even SOX to a certain extent.
Yeah. And even outside of regulations, you're making sure that you can prove to somebody that your company policies are being met, whatever they may be for handling data. Now you have a way of looking at that and evaluating that.
This will help you be a much better tattletale instead of just a Chicken Little running around telling scary stories.
Sure. Yeah. Exactly. But that's why the investigation tab, like, that's why we say slice and dice, go crazy. We've got 28 filters. You figure out what you want and go ahead and slice and dice, and you'll find it here. And then we see the policy. So then there's another tab that shows all of the policies that the preset policies that you've created. And then the configuration tab. So you really can go in there. You could turn scanning on and off for certain working environments. You can turn it on for all of them, but say, there's only a couple that are of concern for a project that you're working on, you can just scan those particular environments. So it really is flexible to allow you to use this tool, to however you want to use it. So those are all the the tabs. And, when we talk about, often we get questions about, well, what are the types of things that you're identifying, like that the AI and the NLP identifies? And there's so much more, but this is just an example of the things that we're finding. So,
and I love that we're looking at this from a global perspective, not just like focused on the US or North America, but like we're really thinking about this, guys, from a global perspective of what each country's different policies, different regulations, and things like that might have or might come into play. Based on where your company's located, where it's has offices and affiliations and things like that, it really is a global approach to scanning data.
Yep, for sure, and yes, we have customers all over the globe. Occasionally we get asked about a very obscure identifier that may not be the national identifier, but it's maybe some particular areas use it that we don't support, but we support a lot. The most popular ones you can see here, Italy, Botswana, Japan, Germany, UK. And then, the sensitive PII, those are things like, criminal procedures, health references, religious beliefs. Like, these are the things that you really do need to understand. What do you have and where it is? Because you need to make sure that you're protecting that, and that you've got, if you're going to, not all data is created equal. And this sort of comes into the security discussion. How do you, from a data protection standpoint, what kind of policies do you apply? From a cyber resilience standpoint, what kind of policies do you apply? You can't really understand and assign those policies unless you know what data you have first, because otherwise you're just doing a blanket approach to policies, and that's not efficient and it's not effective. It's not, you can't manage that.
It's potentially dangerous as well, in the sense of, like, if you're just blanket applying a single policy across your entire data set without consideration of what category or whether it's risky sensitive data or not, like, you could be making mistakes in data protection, disaster recovery, reporting, all of the above, if you're not doing these kinds of categorizations correctly. So great point. That's one that I hadn't even really thought about. Like, that's the alleviation of risk by customizing all of this and understanding what you have is a huge deal.
Yeah. I mean, knowledge is power, right? So once you have that, when you have this insight, now you can make the right decisions. So I mean, powerful tool. And so, I think we touched a little bit upon how does it work. You do have to have BlueXP, again, because it's a core service within BlueXP. So if you already have BlueXP, go spin up, the instance and get started. If you don't have BlueXP, register for BlueXP. It's free. And there are a lot of other really good capabilities within BlueXP, especially if you're trying to operate and manage hybrid cloud environments. BlueXP was developed specifically for that purpose. So I would say go deploy BlueXP. It's free. It's easy. Register, and then you're going to activate classification. We talked about you could deploy either on-prem, you could deploy in the cloud. You'll scan your sources, and we support all of our NetApp sources. So whether you're in the cloud, CBO, FSXN, ANF, GCNV, or if you're on-prem, any NAS storage grid, plus your databases. So structured and unstructured data. It'll automatic, once you set up your sources, it'll start scanning, it'll automatically populate the dashboard, and then you're good to go. Start filtering, go get your reports, and just, explore.
Fantastic. When you say set up BlueXP, like, we don't need to go in. We need to bring someone back on to do like a full-on BlueXP demo. We did that, I believe, with Chuck either this past summer or last summer, but we need to do a refresher on that one. I want to set it up myself for my own gear that I've got back here, and run some of this stuff on my own data, see what happens. Especially since you promised me NetApp can't see it.
Well, yes, NetApp can't see it. So, I mean, and within BlueXP, there are a lot of other really good capabilities, like digital advisor. So ActiveIQ is now digital advisor. So you get like all kinds of stats just from an operational perspective, some security stats in there. We also have BlueXP ransomware protection, which is a new service that we launched, which helps orchestrate the entire ransomware defense, leveraging some on-box capabilities like ARP and F policy. So there's a lot of goodness within BlueXP. So yeah, I would encourage you guys to check it out.
Nice.
But we talked about this before too. So these were just some real world results. You know, we do see a lot of education. We see, you know, a lot of regulated industries like healthcare, you know, again, because of they have compliance standards. So they really need to better understand what kind of data they're storing in PII.
I imagine finance as well, right there alongside healthcare, is probably a huge benefactor of this.
Yes, totally. Yep. Finance, education, healthcare. What else? Some of the other big ones.
I mean, most healthcare companies at this point, from a corporate level, are financial institutions anyway.
Yeah.
So I mean, from the insurance standpoint, at least, right?
Yeah.
So they're dealing with as much financial data and PII as a hedge fund or a bank.
Yeah.
So I think that like a lot of that crosses over regardless of industry.
Yeah.
Like every company at some level is dealing with financial, HR related sensitive PII. Education is dealing with it because you're dealing with kids.
Yeah.
And there's its own special kind of regulation around that.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I see you've got geosciences on here as well. That's another whole level of, you know, you're mapping genome. Like that's crazy sensitive data.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of these, regardless of the company, are going to exist in any given company.
Yeah.
It's almost not even relevant to talk about the industries anymore because every company has all of these things.
True. You have employees, right? Which means you probably have social security numbers.
Yeah, you paid your employees, I hope, right? It means you've got their bank information, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, would you be able to tell me, like, you know, how many employees, you know, have information about them, like social security numbers, that's open to the entire organization? Like, don't you think you would want to know that? Yeah.
Who stored their pay stubs in their OneDrive and accidentally shared it with the entire company?
Yeah.
So you know, that kind of stuff exists, guys. We're not making this up.
Right. Right. And they'll find it, you know, with like ransomware. I mean, hopefully you'll find it before the bad actors do, but with ransomware as a service that's out there now, I mean, it doesn't even take any kind of skill, any kind of hacking skill anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not worth the risk. You know, and then this is just, again, just a recap of everything that we're talking about. But I mean, the idea behind this is, you know, we're all about intelligent data infrastructure. And this truly, like, you could really see how valuable this is in providing intelligence and insight to make smart decisions about your data.
Yeah, so I'm walking through this. We were looking at this right before we started the show, and I loved this because I'm looking at it like you're doing a flex clone of the source, and you're scanning the flex clone. So you're not scanning your production data set and impacting the performance of that potentially. You're actually scanning the flex clone of it, which I loved. But you're also looking at this through the lens of a filter. And can you go over the difference between the exclude and the other option?
Yeah. Well, with the exclude, you could scan the source if you want. With exclude, we said it makes sense to create a flex clone of that because what you're going to be doing is deleting the stuff you don't want. So you don't want to delete that from the source, you know, most likely.
Gotcha.
And then once you create a clone, manipulate that, including permanently deleting things, now you're left with a clone that is clean data that's ready for ingest from that, you know, newly cloned ONTAP volume. And then you can move it to wherever you need to move it so that you can use that volume then as your ingest. That's your data set for ingest. So here, what we're saying is you're creating the clone. You're going to configure and scan that clone, which is so easy. Again, in that configuration tab, you just go in. If it's in BlueXP, and that's also the beauty of BlueXP, is that BlueXP will go and find your working environments, and so you can see them within BlueXP. So you'll find that, you'll configure it. If you have an existing policy, just run that existing policy that was created either by, you know, the data engineers can go in there and create a policy to make it easy for the data scientists. or run a pre-configured policy that is already in there that was created by NetApp. So if you have a policy, do that. If you don't have a policy, go into that investigation tab across those 28 filters, filter for whatever the heck you want, category, right? So say I just want all finance files, and you can choose file type, you can choose data sensitivity, data format. Do you want to include duplicates or do you want to exclude? You could get rid of informal data, like we talked about, MP3s. And then from that, once you do that, you could create a policy, and then it sort of moves over to the left to a pre-configured policy. But filter, create your policy, and then you're left with, what you're, the information that you want to exclude. You could delete that then from that clone. And then in that clone, you're left with the stuff that you didn't exclude. And then
that becomes your ingest of what you're going to train on. Yeah.
Right. So now that's a volume of clean data. Excluded all of the stuff you said I didn't want. So that's one way of doing it. The other way you can do it is to include. So in here, you can take any source, and then you can say, all right, I'm looking specific out of this huge data set across whatever working environments you're choosing. You can say, give me all finance files, give me all whatever you want, age, file type, file size, formats, whatever you want. And now it'll return results of all of those files. So now you could either download that, you could, export results to CSV. It'll tell you the source, and then you have what you need now to move those files into, say, another share, and then you'll use that, or a volume, and you'll use that volume now to ingest.
Yeah.
So there's depending on what your requirements are, there's a few different ways. I mean, people may have, found other ways to do it, but these are the two that we've seen customers use and that we could recommend.
You mentioned that this was for NetApp only stuff. I'm not naive enough to think that each customer only has NetApp stuff in their racks, in their data centers. How do we do this in concert with some of the other tools that are out there? What are some partners that we work with that extend beyond the NetApp footprint to maybe capture more of the true enterprise data set?
Yeah, I mean, there are other classification tools out there. Some of our partners, one was a competitor when, this was a chargeable service. Varonis is a good tool that customers can use, but there are other specialized tools, like depending on what your requirements are. Like if you want like a real, compliance solution that does, cookie management and full soup to nuts, that legal teams would use. There are other specialized, like OneTrust is a specialized solution. We're really about data management for NetApp. And that's why, we did used to support a lot of other solutions and a lot of other storage providers, but it was hard. We don't own them. That's not our technology. We couldn't really guarantee how it would work on other technology. It worked great on NetApp. And so we decided that this would also be a really good value add for NetApp. And obviously we want you to put more on NetApp. So the more you put on NetApp. But I will say, if there is a data migration use case, so anybody out there that may have a competing array and they're thinking of, wanting to better understand that because they want to move it to NetApp, but they want to understand that estate first before they move it, there are special cases where we can work through, our team and professional services and open it up to other vendors for a short period of time just to understand and then migrate.
Just to catalog what's on that system before takeout. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So if you've got some aged out systems that you don't really want to replace and you just want to move everything to your NetApp estate, we can help you do that. And talk to your rep, give them a call, let them know, and they'll probably end up calling Darnell, saying, Darnell, help.
Yeah. Please approve this request form.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Approved.
Well, Darnell, this has been fantastic. I definitely want to. One of my goals for 2025 is to dive more into BlueXP than I have previously, and actually put it into practice here in my own stuff, and play with some of the kit that I have, as well as some of these services like classification. We definitely want to start doing more of that. I'm glad we started with this though, because this is something that I've been hot on the heels of probably since before the holiday break last year, of just get your data estate together. Like, you've got to get on the ball with this, because it's going to sneak up on you and kick your butt. But if you can get ahead of it, if you can make sure that everything is taken care of, that you've got everything organized and tagged and included or excluded, like those policies are built, and as you're ingesting data, if you've got all of that set up and ready to go, you're not going to get yelled at as much. So I know this is something that we as storage and infrastructure admins have really never had to do before, but this is a good thing. These are new responsibilities that are now falling on the infrastructure teams to take care of some of this stuff for some of these newer roles that are coming up, such as the data scientist and the data engineer. So embrace it. Don't reject it, I guess is what I'm saying. Learn it. Don't scoff at it. It's not my job. Yes, it is. You are the librarian. You are the janitor of the data, of all the trash that people are throwing into your volumes, in your shares. You are the janitor, and it's your job to keep it clean, keep the house clean. So, yep. Darnell, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was saying that's great advice. Yeah, I 100% agree.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I know you got to run. Thanks to everybody for joining the show today. Really appreciate it. Look forward to having you back soon. This has been fantastic. And guys, make sure if you're watching this after we're live, make sure you leave a comment down below thanking Darnell, or letting us know if you have any questions about anything that we talked about today. Darnell, thank you very much.
Good. Thank you, Nick.
All right, guys. Well, there we go. Little sneak peek into next week before we get out of here. Drew, what did I book for next week? All of a sudden, I can't remember what the actual show was going to be for next week. Let me peek here for a second. Was it Yes, that's right. Okay. So you guys remember a few weeks ago, we talked about flex groups. Well, that guest was a gentleman by the name of John Lance. And John has agreed to come back and talk about the other area that he focuses on, fabric pools. So we were just talking about stale data a few minutes ago with Darnell here, and making sure we capture all of that. That is one of the top solutions. It's not talked about enough. Fabric pools is awesome. We're going to be bringing John back to talk about that and go deep into how fabric pools works, how it's different than any other tiering you've ever seen before. So absolutely make sure you're subscribed here to the channel. Make sure you got your notifications turned on. We're here every week, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific. If you're not with us already, the best way to keep track of everything is over in Discord, netappdiscord.com, or if you've already got an account, discord.gg/netapp is the little shortcut there. My name is Nick Howell. Thank you guys so much for joining the show today. I really appreciate it. We'll be back next week with more. And a reminder again, if you're still here and you haven't watched it yet, go back and check out the launch from a couple of weeks ago. Lots of great information, lots of new systems in the ASA lineup. If you're a block shop, you're really going to enjoy some of the details that Jeff Baxter and I went over in that on-air episode 2 weeks ago Tuesday. So go back and check that out here in the playlist. But we'll see you next week. Everybody have a great rest of your week. Take care.